Welcome to the validator panel of the mark validation system. In this tutorial, we will cover mark validation, the principles of mark validation, as well as how to review the mark validation history. To get started, log into your validator account. Once logged in, to begin the mark validation process, you must use the Marks link on the left-hand side menu. By clicking on the Marks link, you'll be presented with two options. The first option is to view marks, where you will see all your mark validation history, including all the marks that have been rejected, currently awaiting feedback, or validated. And your second option will see to grab mark. Grab mark will take the first mark that is currently pending validation in the validation queue and assign it to you as the validator. This will allow you to validate the mark. For the purpose of this tutorial, we'll be using a demo mark called Mark Validation System. All the information presented below will be as the mark holder has uploaded it to the Mark Validation System. This includes the word mark, the mark holder themselves, the type of mark, registration number, and various other information to go with the mark. As a validator, you must review all the information below to validate the mark or reject the mark. Proceeding further down the menu, you will see the questions appear. These questions will be used in order to validate the mark. For a complete validation, all of the questions must be ticked and verified against the matching criteria. Only once a full 100% has been achieved in a validation circle may a mark be validated. Most of the questions provided for you as a validator are linked to the documents that have been provided by the mark holder. These documents may be reviewed further down. For the purpose of this tutorial, we'll be using a trademark, in which a trademark certificate, a signed declaration of use, and a proof of use of the mark must have been uploaded by the mark holder. To review the documentation, simply click on the documentation name itself. This will bring up a menu on the right-hand side of all the required information pertaining to that specific mark. For different types of marks, these headings will be different in accordance to the required documentation. As a validator, you have numerous tools at your disposal to review the documentation. You may either zoom in and out of the documents provided, switch between them, and additional tools on the right-hand side, which allow you to either print the documents, download it to your local host, go up and down pages, as well as rotate the information provided. In the event that this mark required additional information, you may review the requirements and previous history with the mark holder by simply clicking the conversation history here. As a validator, you may either reject the mark, approve the mark, or request additional information. That may be done through the options available at the bottom of the page. It is recommended that a validator never reject a mark unless the mark information provided is blatantly incorrect. In the event that additional information is required, or a piece of information has been provided in error, it is up to the validator to request additional information from the mark holder by simply clicking the Request Information button over here. This means that the mark validation system will automatically notify the account holder to provide any outstanding information as requested by you, the validator. As a validator, you must set the subject as well as the message pertaining to what information is currently missing to further elaborate for the mark holder. Once done, you may send that information to the mark holder or skip the message, and the information for the request will simply be sent to the mark holder. As a validator, you have additional tools towards the top of the page. These mark options may be found over here. As a simpler way to view documentation, simply click on View Supporting Documentation. This will bring up the documentation menu on the right-hand side. Your second option is to view the conversation history. This would be as if you had clicked the conversation history in the supporting documentation menu. The third option is to refer the mark to a different panel. In extenuating circumstances, a validator may find themselves not able to validate a mark due to the lack of knowledge or information provided. In this event, the mark holder may refer the mark to a different panel for revision. The mark validation system will automatically handle this request and forward the mark validation to another panel. And the last option is to refer due to a conflict of interest. In very rare cases, the mark validation panel might withdraw a mark that belongs to your organization. In this event, a validator may not validate the marks of their own organization and must mark it as a conflict of interest. For the purpose of this tutorial, we'll be validating the mark. Once all the required checks have been passed, the green circle will be complete and the mark may now be validated. by simply clicking on the Validate Mark button over here. The mark has now been validated and you will automatically be directed to the mark history page. This page may also be accessed by clicking on Marks on the left-hand side and Viewing Marks. The mark history page will allow you to review all the marks that you have rejected, completed, that are currently awaiting feedback, or have been marked as conflicted. For the purpose of this tutorial, we can see that 1 mark is currently awaiting feedback, 1 mark was in conflict, 3 were rejected, and the most recent one that we have just validated is now complete. Some basic principles apply to the validation of marks. The first of which is that any mark that is currently awaiting feedback, of which the feedback has been provided, will automatically be assigned to you as the validator upon logging in and grabbing a new mark. This allows for mark validation to continue as required. If by the end of a 7-day period a mark that is awaiting feedback has not been provided with feedback, the mark validation system will automatically set the status of the mark to rejected. Mark validation must be performed by a minimum of 2 validators. This means that when a new mark is grabbed from the left-hand side menu, it might have already been validated by a previous validator, or you might be the first validator to be validating this mark. In the event that you are the second validator, there might be some revision history that you will have to review on the right-hand side menu for the mark, where the documentation is also displayed. For a complete validation, both validators must complete the validation process and validate the mark as positive. In the event that there is a conflict between a validator and a secondary validator, where one validator has rejected the mark and the second validator has approved it, the mark validation panel will review the mark. Thank you for watching this tutorial.